Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission, to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone
And what you just heard were the first words spoken by William Shatner in Star Trek, the original series, and they would in turn become some of the most famous words ever spoken by him. I believe that everybody should at least know of William Shatner, because movie stars have become so mainstream in the last 20 years, and William Shatner is no exception, having a career spanning over 70. Today we will talk about who William Shatner is, then about how he got into acting, and finally where he is now. Let's start with who he is and how he grew up. William Shatner was born on March 22nd, 1931 in Côte-Saint-Luc on the island of Montreal in Quebec, Canada, to Anne Garmace and Joseph Shatner. He had 2 siblings, sister Joy and Farley Shatner. After graduating from McGill University, Shatner joined a local summer theater group as an assistant manager. After that, he then performed with the National Repertory Theatre of Ottawa, as well as the Shakespeare Festival in Stratford, Ontario, as an understudy. William Shatner spent years honing his craft until he made his debut in The Brothers Karamazov, which released on February 20th, 1958, with him as the 3rd leading character, according to William Shatner biography by IMDb on October 17th, 1990. After that, he was kept busy during the first half of the 60s doing movies and TV shows, some being The Intruder in 1962, where he was the lead role, The Defenders in 1961, and in The Twilight Zone in 1958, where he portrayed the character Bob Wilson. Now that you know how he grew up and what his first few jobs were, let's talk about what he's really known for. In 1966, William Shatner was cast in a series called Star Trek that would later be known as Star Trek, the original series, alongside Leonard Nimoy, DeForest Kelley, James Doohan, and Nichelle Nichols. William Shatner got the role of Captain James Tiberius Kirk, who was the captain of a starship known as the Enterprise. Shatner's character would go on frequent adventures and missions with Leonard Nimoy's character Spock and DeForest Kelley's character Leonard McCoy, who Kirk would call Bones, and James Doohan's character Montgomery Scott, who they would call Scotty, and Nichelle Nichols' character Nyota Uhura, acting as supporting roles. William Shatner played Captain Kirk for 3 seasons and 80 episodes and considered it to be the best thing that had ever happened to him in terms of his career, says his book Boldly Go, which was released on October 4th, 2022. While working on the show, he became very close friends with Leonard Nimoy and DeForest Kelley, and together they built a relationship that would span decades. But in 1969, Star Trek was canceled, so Shatner had to find work elsewhere. During the rest of the 60s and almost all of the 70s, he was making rounds in various guest appearances on different TV shows like Ironside in 1967, starring as Bob Parkin, and Marcus Welby, MD, playing the role of Dr. Bellings. Luckily for Shatner, the 1980 saw a resurgence in his career, with people acquiring a new interest in Star Trek, and with it came 6 big-budget Star Trek movies. Star Trek: The Motion Picture, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, Star Trek III: The Search for Spock, Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home, Star Trek V: The Final Frontier, Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, and the Star Trek: The Next Generation movie, Star Trek Generations. After Star Trek Generations, William Shatner's run as Captain Kirk would come to an end, with Chris Pine replacing him in the reboot film in 2009, and Paul Wesley playing the character in the Star Trek Strange New World series in 2022. Shatner would go on to be in TV series called The Practice in 1997 and its spin-off Boston Legal in 2004. He would also surprise everybody with his comedic talent in movies such as Miss Congeniality in 2000 and Loaded Weapon 1 in 1993. Sadly, on February 27, 2015, Shatner's lifelong friend and co-star Leonard Nimoy died of a previous diagnosed disease. Shatner said he felt devastated hearing about the death of his friend in his book Leonard in February of 2016, but he sadly couldn't attend his funeral due to a previously scheduled fundraiser. William Shatner's acting career may be slowing a bit, but he has progressed in other areas. William Shatner, as he got older, got more and more into preserving his health and became the spokesperson for various nutrition companies. Now that you know all of the recent events with William Shatner, let's wrap this up. Today we have talked about who William Shatner is, how he got started in his acting career, and where he is now. The words spoken by William Shatner, the intro to Star Trek, the original series, will go down in history as some of the most famous words ever spoken. Little did William Shatner know these few words spoken would let him boldly go where no man has gone before.